Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. We have two very special guests today, and the episode will be about Pikachu. So I'm excited to get into that. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure that if you guys are enjoying the content, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what kind of topics you guys would like us to cover in the future. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure to rate the podcast as well. And of course, make sure to sign up or not sign up. You can't sign up for the tournament, but make sure to check out Watch the Throne. It's going to be on December 8th through 10th. If you guys want to keep up to date with Watch the Throne, make sure to check out the Twitter at at WTT events. And we have amazing players already invited. We had Mia and the Buzz qualified through SmashCon, so I'm really excited about this event. So make sure to keep up to date. And yeah, now it's time to talk about Stride and Coach's Corner are coming together to bring you guys a Q&A for all of your favorite Smash podcasts. So you can go ahead and scan the QR code on the bottom right, or you can join the Stride Discord by using the link bit.ly/Coach's Corner QA. Once you do that, you can go ahead and check out the channels and roles section on the left, and then hit browse channels on the top to find the podcast Q&A category to ask your questions to either Coach's Corner, Tweak Talks, or Lights Out. So go ahead and get all your questions answered here with Stride. Pikachu. So every time we talk about a character here at Coach's Corner, we like to go over the history of Pikachu, and of course, Esam here is like the Pikachu for quite some time and has been for multiple games. And also, I would assume you also know a lot about the character from like 64 and Melee as well. So Esam, if you would you take us through the how strong this character is? I think this might be one of the strongest characters in Smash Bros. History.
I would say he's absolutely the strongest character in Smash Bros. History. He has been, at the very least, viable in every game, right? Like, he's the uncontested, I think, best character in 64. I don't know how he was considered at the beginning of the meta. Sorry, I'm cleaning my glasses for the YouTube viewers. But like I don't know what it was at the beginning because I never played 64 competitively, but current day, he's clearly seen as the best character. The combination of him and Kirby have been considered talks for a ban in that game because it's boring for the meta. Like I had spoken to Super Boom Fan when we were both part of Panda about that. In Melee, I mean, when I started playing back in 05, 06, Pikachu was not considered a good character. I mean, he had one good rep, maybe two at the time. The main one, I'm pretty sure, was Anther, who also will come into play in a little bit in the Brawl days. But he wasn't considered good. The reason I picked him up actually was because, back when the scene was smaller and there weren't 17 locals a week in every single region, we would have a tournament a month or two tournaments a month. And so they would typically ran singles, doubles, and a side event. And oftentimes the side event was low tier. So I picked up Pikachu to play in the low tier tournaments, and I didn't really use him in normal. I think I maybe used him in one or two tournament sets ever, like normally. So he wasn't considered good, but obviously as Melee's meta has grown and adapted, he is now considered probably what I would consider like the worst viable character with Axe, and you now have Swift, who's amazing. Both those guys obviously have done amazingly well at regionals and majors. I mean, Axe has won a major and has, was top 10 for multiple years in a row. So the character's clearly good enough, right? Even in current meta. Better than Samus. But I mean, in the Brawl days, there was a little bit more of contention for him because I feel like a lot of people don't really argue Melee tier lists outside of the top 5 order, but everyone knows the good character. Like, you could list the good characters in Melee. And because there was so much to push, nowadays there's still so much to push, right? And it's 15 years later compared to when Brawl came out. Brawl, there was a lot more argument about tiers because people, I feel like, just seemed to care more. And then I was a person in Brawl that was like notable. So, my opinion of Pikachu was always quite high. Maybe not as high as it was when I became like a very, very strong player. But Brawl, you consider what? Meta Knight, Ice Climbers, Olimar is like clearly the top 3. I don't think anyone will argue that. And I consider Pikachu tied for the next spot, and it really depends on what you value between him, Falco, and Diddy Kong, right? But like in official tier lists, he was more getting like ninth. He would be under, Diddy Kong, Falco, sometimes under Marth. People overrated Snake universally because they weren't from Florida and didn't know how to beat him.
I remember endless discussions between you and the Marth players about that matchup. Pikachu Marth.
Dude, Shia. Ooh.
Yes, Shia. Shoutouts.
So yeah, I argued a lot with people in like the Smash Boards back rooms. I'm like, yeah, Pikachu Marth is even because I beat all the Marths, but like I'm better than all the Marths that I've played as players because that was when I had massive ego, right? Like y'all don't know. If you didn't know me before, like know of me before 2015, 2016, you don't know Egosam. It was bad.
Different beast.
Oh, dude. I mean, you are probably aware at some level. Ramses.
I am. I was an honorary Floridian back then. I remember.
Yes, of course. Probably because your relationship with Nick Riddle, right?
Yep,
So,
yep.
Who's my brother?
Definitely remember Teen Sam. It's a much different person.
Like I'm toxic for laughs now sometimes, but like I'm still aware of my position, whether I'm doing good or bad. Before, I mean, in the main rankings that happened, I mean, I consider myself top 2 or 3 in the country for Brawl, and I was put 6th in the SSB rank, that like the one that was afterwards, or like as Smash 4 was coming out. So like I was good, and I let people know that I was good. Yeah, I mean, Pikachu, regardless of exact position, was clearly very strong, had very strong matchups over a lot of the cast. Had some losing matchups, as he always does, because inherently his design is just like scary. But Quick Attack was broken and he had Chain Grab, so it didn't matter.
Chain Grab, Infinites, right? Like Pikachu had some crazy shit in Brawl.
Yeah, I mean, Quick Attack
Lock.
Yeah, the lock. Yeah.
Like, it was crazy that cancels weren't even that important. Like they were, but like it somehow wasn't, because Quick Attack wasn't like an offensive tool like that. Like you only got like a combo off of Quick Attack starting at like 80, and that was Quick Attack into Dare Splat, which didn't matter, and it only comboed into like anything relevant starting at like 130, which is when you're kind of killing anyway. But I mean, it made him evasive, right? He's always been a very hard to hit, hard hitting character, who has a ton of expression and like one of the best projectiles in the game. Starting in Brawl, they kind of sucked in 64 and Melee, which is kind of funny because I feel like projectiles are overall just so good in those games. I mean, Power Shield only exists in Melee, but like Fox lasers in and Boomerang in 64, and Falco lasers, Fox lasers, Sheik needles in Melee, turnips, like anyway. So again, I feel like this is kind of when, especially when Smash 4, that's when like content started to exist, which means that tier lists were, important. And I'm one of those, right? But Pikachu, to me, was still an incredibly strong character. I mean, back at the beginning of the game, I was like, yeah, like pre-patch Sheik and Diddy Kong are broken. Pika's right there. Like I was definitely had multiple tier lists where Pika was like top 2, which thinking about it now, I'm like, oh my God, Sonic was in that game.
Yeah, there's
and
Rosa,
I still think like Sheik and Diddy were overrated, but like Sonic was in that game, and Rosa was in that, and Fox was in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I know, Charles, I'm bringing up Fox. I'm sorry.
Smash for Fox, dude.
Yeah.
Why did his up tilt 2-frame
into back air combo too?
I mean, there's the pre-patch. There was the jab infinite too.
The jab
infinite.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I watched some random parts of that game's history, and I'm like, this is gross. There is some dumb things.
Very wild.
I was watching Pound 2016 the other day, and I watched I think it was like Nakat's Fox, and I was like, people did, or it might have been like Larry versus a Bayonetta player or something, and I was like, oh my God, Fox played weird.
Mm-hmm.
Then that put me into the rabbit hole of I'm gonna watch me versus Larry and me versus like all these players that I like playing, because that's what happens every time you watch like a nostalgic set. You're like, what about these other nostalgic sets? Like I can't watch a Brawl set, because if I do, I'll spend 3 hours watching Brawl sets that I'm just like, I remember this read, I remember this setup, which is crazy that I remembered specific stuff like this many years later. But yeah, Smash 4 came out and Pikachu was still absurd. Like I think even at like end game, knowing what I know now and like reevaluating the game, I'd probably put him in top 7, which is
That's
still
still
very
pretty
high for
high,
that
yeah.
game, right?
Yeah.
Because you have like the generally considered like Bayo, Cloud, Fox, Rosa, Sonic are like, I feel like universallys in the top 5. Then you have like Diddy Kong, Sheik, Pika were like the next tier, and like Mewtwo. But I considered him really powerful. I mean, he had a really bad matchup with Mewtwo and Sonic in that game. Mewtwo, because his down tilt was so disjointed. So like you couldn't approach him, and he reflected tjolt, and he had a charge shot, right?
Mhm.
And your combos didn't really work on him because you know how like Mewtwo, when he hard lands, he like kind of bounces on his butt and is like kind of high in the air. Pikachu couldn't grab him during that because it was too high. So we didn't get our drag down combos on him like we normally do, or we had to cut them way shorter.
Jeez.
But I feel like he did very well overall in the meta, right? Like I was the Bayonetta Slayer. I still to this day will say, yeah, Pikachu beat Bayo. Like absolutely. I think Pikachu beat Cloud in that game. Those were the 2 big meta threats, right? The buzz is crazy, so Rosa matchups don't matter, right? Like even nowadays, you're like, yeah, these characters beat Dabuz or beat Rosa, and then Dabuz plays you and he 9 stalks you, and you go, okay, you got it, man. And then I think did well versus the other meta threats of like Sheik, Diddy Kong, beat Peach. Just only really struggled with Sonic and Mewtwo. So very strong place in the meta. Oh, and Mario, I guess. But also I'm an aggressive player, which we'll get into when me and ShinyMark talk about Ultimate. But yeah, I consider him a really strong character.
You started thinking Mario was even at the end of Smash 4, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, it's just, well, I considered it even, but I was stubborn. And then I was like, I'd rather just play Samus, because then I started beating all the Marios with Samus, like no issue. So I was like, I don't need to play Pika. It's fine.
The pop-off.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, so we're
good.
pop-off, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, he's always been considered good, right? And then, of course, in Ultimate, I've been a huge proponent before this guy existed, right? ShinyMark. I don't know where he's going to be in the overlay. But Pikachu busted, right? I think he is the best in this game relative to the cast that he's been since 64. I used to consider him number 1 for a long time. I now consider him at worst 3rd. Yeah, and of course, that's an inflated opinion by I know so many things that I don't do and I can't do at the moment consistently. And I know that ShinyMark has a lot of things that he can do that I can't, and I can do things that he can't. So I'm like, dude, this character's broken. If we just put our brains together, you became bald and I had hair, and then we win every turn.
The fusion dance, yeah.
But I mean, I would still say that most people ignoring Japan, because they have a very low opinion of that character, relatively, right? I think most people consider him top 10. And in a game like Ultimate, top 10 is totally fine unless you're talking to Mutace.
Yeah.
I mean, top 40 is fine unless you're talking to very specific people. So top 60 is fine. Ultimate's crazy. Incineroar is a meta threat, and that character's not good, like relatively.
Yeah, like should not be a meta threat, but is a meta threat. Yeah.
Like he's to me lower high tier, which is top 50.
Right.
We come from Brawl. Being top 50 in Brawl means that you're unusable.
Trash. Well,
Yeah,
I don't
like,
even
if
think there
you're
was
not-
50
Zero
players
winning
in Brawl.
matchups.
There's not. There's
Exactly.
like-
You didn't exist.
You did not. You were an assist trophy.
Like if you weren't top 10 in any game before Smash 4, you were banished. You were the very specialty player with the very specialty character that occasionally got 7th.
Yeah. The knowledge check simulator. That's what you were.
The
And then
MLG
after-
Dallas Sonic tournament
Yeah, like
where there's
so-
2 Sonics in top 8. That's the only time that ever happened ever.
Real quick question, Esam, before we get into Ultimate Pikachu. How would you rank the strength of Pikachu in every game? So like obviously like 64 would probably be 1, right? And then from there. Because I think at worst Pikachu was high tier. Like in Pikachu's
In every
worst
game.
In
game.
Melee.
Right.
I consider that mid tier.
Yeah, it's
Or
like
because
of
mid-tier
how
in
Melee
Melee.
works.
Yeah,
like
okay,
Melee's
how
like
it
top
works.
tier is like Fox, Falco, Sheik, Puff, Marth. And then like high tier is the rest of the good characters like Ice Climbers, Peach, Falcon.
Right. Viable mid tier, so to speak. But yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead and like in your opinion, I mean you're probably like the
If
most
I'm-
knowledgeable in terms of
yeah.
Pikachu in every game. So in your opinion, what's the ranking?
Do you want me to do like relative to the cast or in like absolute strength?
Relevant
'Cause those
to
are-
the cast in their game.
Okay. Obviously 64 is number one because he's the best character. Like uncontested. No one argues that. Like it is it is definitive. Like there might be small movements and tiers in that game for like, oh, Fox is better, Falcon's better, Ness is better, but like it's Pikachu, Kirby is top two, right? Then you have Ultimate. I think clearly.
Rank 2 for Ultimate. Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean he's broken. He's just hard.
He might be top one.
He might be. Well, Steve's broken.
Well,
Steve players don't nil, and they're
Yeah.
like top 10 in the world. We're shush for now.
we'll discuss it later.
Yes.
But I still think he's top one.
But like then Ultimate, and then I would probably say it's hard, right?
I think this is the hard part right here. Brawl or Smash 4.
Yeah, I think realistically, Smash 4 is next. Like I know in Brawl he was crazy good, but the thing is the characters above him were still so much better.
Yeah.
And like, you know, there are definitely arguments of like Diddy Kong just infinites everyone. Right. And like the meta of that game was so for it was so screwed up. It was so messed up. Like even DDD has the standing pivot grab infinite that there was a player in Georgia who was like starting to get good at that the last like 6 months of the game. And that doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. God was insane. And meta of that game was crazy, right? So like Snake got grabbed at 0 and died. It's like, oh, cool. Then I would say Smash 4. Because again, he was really strong. Or sorry, I would say Smash 4, then Brawl. My bad.
Right.
Because I think Smash 4, like, dude, in this game, you know how like me and ShinyMark will hit like DI in up air thunders?
Right.
That existed in Smash 4.
Yeah,
and I
you
never
realize
did that
later.
on purpose. I did it. I figured it out. Literally, the only reason I figured out Upper Thunder and Ultimate was because I watched Void's Pichu hit it a lot, and I was like, "Can Pikachu do this?" Obviously, not on DI out. I was like, "On DI in, maybe," and then it worked, and I was like, "Oh."
Because people are scared
then,
when they're
like-
off stage because they're trying to DI like towards the stage, right?
Yeah, or you know, we have down air in this game, and DIing out is like easier up air bridges. Like DI in is good. It's the first good, right? But I'm able to. But then I went back and played Smash 4 for like a stream in over quarantine, and I was like, does Upper Thunder work in this game? And then I did it to someone as I was playing like on Elite or For Glory, and I was just like, oh my god, I would have been able to kill everyone all the time. But I would say the biggest thing that kind of puts Pikachu over or Smash 4 over Brawl in my head is he just had way more consistent killing because Up Throw Thunder worked on everyone but 2 characters in that game. So
Sonic
like
and Diddy, right?
yeah, so like I grabbed anyone at 110, and if I was good enough, I killed them, right? And in Brawl, you kind of still had to get a jab lock or random forward smash. Like it was read based killing, but that's just how Brawl was in general, unless it was a chain grab matchup or an edge guarding matchup. But yeah, so I would say Smash 4, then Brawl, and then Melee's clearly the lowest, and he's still a good character. I mean, Axel literally got top 8 at Shine this weekend. So,
all right, sick. So now we can get in to Ultimate. So I can pass it off to ShinyMark now. What are your current thoughts of Pikachu in the current meta? Obviously, Pikachu was a lot stronger early Ultimate. In really early Ultimate, people didn't think too highly of Pikachu. I know ESAM thought highly of Pikachu right off the rip. I also like about 3 to 6 months in, I started thinking like Pikachu is also pretty crazy. And then people were
after
like,
me and Light had that grand finals in a
yeah.
SoCal,
It was funny because I just started trying Pikachu and playing Pikachu. I was like, wow, this is like pretty simple, but like there's like the cool drag down stuff. But as SDI got better, and this is the main reason why Japan does not think highly of this character is because SDI counterplay started getting a lot better across the board for Ultimate. So you still think the character's really strong, ShinyMark, and why is that? So most of the community, so like pretty much if you're not a Pikachu player, most of the community thinks that the character's like falling off. There's even a lot of tier lists or even other people's opinions that I hear people say Pikachu's not even top 5, which is pretty wild to me because I still have to like think about it at the very least because now we're getting into like the simplicity versus like complex characters and what you get the reward out of it, right?
Yeah.
That's a deeper conversation, obviously. But ShinyMark, why do you think the character is so strong now?
So like you said, I felt like Pikachu started falling off a lot in the meta or like fell off in the eyes of like the non-Pikachu players.
Sorry, I started doing worse, y'all. My bad.
In terms of the SDI. So it felt like a lot of Pikachu players were like hitting a lot softer relative to like the power creep of the meta, you know. So like obviously Steve was there, now Sonic is there, but I felt like the aspect that Esam was hitting the most for like the most part of Ultimate was obviously like the punish game and the advantage state, right? So then I came along. I learned Pikachu in a way where I didn't really watch Esam that much. So the way that I kind of like saw the character was way more about like his core strengths in neutral, basically, right? Where I saw like, oh, okay, this character is pretty stubby. How do we fix that? Then it's tjolt, mobility, and quick attack, right? This character cannot kill. How do we fix that? It's chip damage, really safe hitboxes, and like down tilt is incredibly safe. Forward air is incredibly safe, and then tjolt. So those are like my three main core tools, as well as the mobility, right? So as I got better in the game, I really started pushing the don't get hit kind of meta in Pikachu instead of like let me fish for a hit and try to kill you kind of meta like that Esam does, you know.
I like that. That's the fun part.
I think
me,
it's fun, but
To
like
to me,
you
no
know what's
judgment.
fun? Winning. So
How many majors have you won?
Based. No,
I'm
no,
on my
no,
way.
you-
I'm on my way.
Based.
I'm a youngin, bro.
Esam's got
Yeah,
the medals.
That's true. Hey man, I got one here from Masa. Shout out to
Hey,
Masa.
Nice.
Good place.
building up the Pikachu
But yeah.
trophy case.
I need to
For
get, yeah, I
sure.
was about to say I need to get a ladder to get onto my shelf where my first place is on.
Holy. Anyways, so yeah, I feel like for a long time, especially during quarantine, um, there was a big kind of drought on Pikachu like results, especially because of online. The meta was adapting. Some matchups were becoming more common, like Game and Watch, for example. Um, and then you know, like Pikachu was just not really all that relevant without Esam, realistically, right? So then, like I came along in like a Wi-Fi tournament. Esam saw me beat Meister in like a Winbox. I don't know what it was.
And I was like, wait, huh? How'd you do that? I've never done
Another
that. How'd you do
Pikachu?
that?
Exactly. So then he saw me and he was like, "Oh, you're playing a lot more neutral, right? Like it's way probably less optimized in terms of like advantage state." And then I actually got really, really, really good at like the combo game, like the punish game. Uh, Probably low key for a while, like better than Esam's like Nair
Oh,
loops
I
at
think
least.
currently you have better combos than me.
Yeah, I feel like the
I'm
Nair
not.
loops at
I
least
think
are
my
very,
upper
very.
bridges are probably like my recognition for upper bridges is a little
I
better,
agree.
and that's about it. Like
Yeah.
your combo game is like you hit people hard as hell right now, and it's great.
Yeah, I'm going
And
for
then
like
you run.
60-70% combos and then like small reads to like optimize damage.
Mhm.
So I feel like Pikachu's getting their like back in terms of like hitting hard for damage. The awkward thing about Pikachu, and Isam and I talked about this also H4 recently,
We have a
where
group
like
chat.
yeah, we have a small
Nice.
group chat where mid percent is kind of awkward. And I also talked to Tony about this. I was like asking him, dude, is it like actually worth it for me to like go for like small conditioning reads at like mid percent? Because like, what if I overshoot backer Sonic at 60%? You know, like okay, he's gonna go to ledge. He has mix-ups. You know, it's and the risk is me getting spin dashed or something. You know, so we discussed this with ESAM and H4, and like we agreed that like the awkward part is the mid percent for like because we have to play for a lot of chip damage and really safe poking over and over. But then once
Or
we
really hard like reads with like DI in up air thunder type
Yeah,
stuff. Like
so
if you're
it's
not
like
really getting
hard
those,
conditioning.
if you're not getting the solid hits of like a grab or a landing nair, which leads to a grab, like you're kind of not, you're hitting them off stage and that's it.
Yeah, like the risk reward is not there for sure. But then once we get past that mid percent area, which is why I'm pushing this kind of not particularly like I'm not trying to go for timeout from zero. But I'm using it like as an active threat, you know, like as the game progresses. So that like approach me, and then I have really good risk reward. If not, okay, I'm chilling. Let me get my chip damage in up until I can like kill you relatively safely with like a let me corner you and then hit you with my multi-hit killing safe aerial forwarder. You know, like that move is insane. Um, so I think that's kind of like where the meta is going with Pikachu. It's like kind of playing really slow in mid percent, but like all the other percents are really, really good. And then the fortunate thing for Pikachu in the meta right now is I feel like he does so well, like in pretty much every matchup that's like relevant in the meta, except like Game and Watch. That's like it. Because I
I
feel
was
like
so scared when you had like the loser of you versus SkyJ had to play Meister, and then you went to game 5. I was like, oh my god, ShinyMark, don't have to
Yeah.
play Meister and losers for like the 4th time
I,
at
I
your
was thinking
majors.
that in the
No.
back of my mind. I don't know why that keeps happening. Like it's literally been like
Every
5
time.
majors now.
Oh, and then
Yeah.
wait, Meister lost, but like I was still like that was the part of bracket. I was like, no.
I was
Dude,
like,
I was
let's
so
go,
scared.
Gact. But yeah,
I don't know how he did that.
so like right now, I think the general consensus for like ultimate meta is like the top tiers, right? Like the really really strong characters are like Steve, Sonic, Aegis, Pikachu. Um, then Kazuya, I feel like has been falling off, but like a lot of people still have that like as a like a checklist at least. You know, like you have to do well against Kazuya or like know the matchup to be good in the meta. And I think like Pikachu beats like he definitely beats Aegis. He definitely beats Joker, which is another character that's like incredibly relevant and good.
The matchup feels easier and easier as time goes on.
It's unfortunately like almost -2 actually.
Damn.
Then he definitely beats Kazuya. It's just tough because like you have to play like really really micro spacey. But we definitely win. I think Sonic has been getting closer, but I still think we're like the main character that can beat him. And I know there's like been a push for
Sonic
like
is just better.
yeah, he's just like
simply
an
just
incredible player. Like when we've been practicing like in friendlies and majors or like even in Coinbox, I feel like it's very few players that can like take sets of him. And fortunately, I think I'm like on a really good pace to like if I get to him, I have a really good chance. And also Esam does really really well
Oh
against
no,
him
I'm dancing for you.
in friendlies.
I'm
But yeah,
dancing
I've
for
seen
you.
the friend. Okay, we'll see when I get there. But like at least like there's been like a good amount of push for like Sonic being like the character that loses no matchups, you know. And I feel like right now, Pikachu is like the main contender. That's not like a fragile ass character like Fox and Aegis, if that makes sense. Because
Travis.
they just get sent off stage. They just get sent off stage and then they just die, you know.
Yeah.
And then who's the last one? Oh yeah, Steve. Steve is like the kind of big discussion. I know Eric and H4 think it's like even, right?
I think it's one of those like the way I consider Pikachu matchups sometimes is it's not necessarily absolutely winning or losing, but it's like Pikachu wins against Steve, and then you're kind of antsy in tournament and you get mental stacked and get hit by a minecart. And so like Pikachu's squishy. So like if you
Yeah.
overextend even a little bit, you might die at 60. Or like something, you know, it's there's a lot of things liable in that matchup for something to go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like a lot of times I feel like Pikachu is the character that can force something to go wrong for characters like, oh yeah, just perfectly out neutral Pikachu because he's stubby. Oh shit, you got back aired. You're gonna die. Right. Whereas Steve is the character where like we have the control. And then, oh, like you rolled and there was a block there that you didn't see because it was off screen. You got up tilted, took 70. And suddenly you know, it gets a lot scarier. Like the last time I played Jake, I just went me brawler because I wanted to be the cheese, right? And I was like, I'm just gonna hit you with 3 and kill you, and I won. But like, I definitely think it's like a theory win tournament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of like
I'm like a really big kind of theory guy in terms of Pikachu because I felt like I feel like there's 2 types of theory. There's like task level theory, like Kazuya extreme dumb movement, you know.
Banjo's the best character in the game.
Yeah, and then there's like the neutral, like play well in tournament and do what you need to do in the matchup theory, you know. And I feel like that's way more realistic, especially like you know, like playing very poking based, playing with the threat of the clog, you know, to have that in the back of the Steve's mind. So I feel like we can definitely agree, like in theory, like Pikachu out mobilities, out chips damages,
Can
and you know, like
edgeguard.
can edge guard.
Drain his resources.
We can surprisingly cheese Steve really well, and we can avoid the cheese really well with like the, you know, the vibes go under the stage meta. So like I feel like
he's broken though, man. I don't know.
but I think there's like a really really good discussion for Pikachu winning the matchup, and then honestly like 90% of matchups left in Ultimate are like winning for Pikachu, and then there's like a few events which are tough for us because we're not accustomed to even matchups, if that makes sense. And then there's
No,
like
that's totally true.
yeah,
Oh
and
my
then
God.
there's Game and Watch, and that's like it. So I feel like the place in Pikachu, like for Pikachu in this meta, is like really really high up there. Like I would say, for me right now, like the lowest I could place him is like top 3, below like
Yeah.
Steve and Sonic. I know Eric doesn't think like that highly about Sonic.
I've readjusted. I think he's
Okay.
good. I don't think he's top 2 good, but
Salute.
I think he's top 4 good.
Okay.
Tier list
Okay,
coming out
okay.
soon.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, I think that's like the lowest placing I could give him. Like he's such an insane character. Like it's actually crazy. But personally, I think he beats Sonic and he beats Steve. So I think he's top 1. And that's kind of like what I think right now.
Nice, nice. Ramses, Tony, did you guys have any questions for some of the best Pikachu players to do it here?
I would like to know from both of you, what do you guys value in the meta at the moment, and how do you guys feel like Pikachu delivers on those things?
So the thing that I've honestly been thinking a lot about in the meta is like fragility, right?
Yeah.
Like it's literally like people be like, yeah, Aegis is the best character because she just has neutral and blah blah blah. And then I watch Shootone versus Andres FN, and I'm like, Andres hit him twice and he died because he was, or like, you know, how many times have you seen Cosmos literally, and this is no shots at Cosmos, right? It's just the character. Like he'll be winning and winning and winning, and then he gets hit off stage once. And like,
Yeah.
you know, because I've played Pikachu for so long, and in Melee I played Samus, right? I had broken recoveries, and I've never really had to go like, I'm off stage, I'm probably dead. That's never been an issue. And so that's one of the things I tried to pick up Min Min as a secondary, right? Because that character, especially pre-patch, was broken. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to play Min Min. It's going to be great. And then I played her in tournament, and I was winning versus Icy Mist in a matchup that I didn't want to play Pikachu in, which was Samus. And then I was up 100% last stock. I got down throwed at 0, and my heart went, I'm dead. Like, oh God, right? Because what if I just get off stage and Min Min's recovery and her disadvantage is bad? Like there are so many characters nowadays that either are really strong because they have ridiculous advantage, like Game and Watch, like Steve, like mostly those two at the moment that you think of, like
Aegis.
Sonic, I guess.
Sonic.
Yeah, Aegis, sword characters, right? And then you have the characters. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking advantage more so like not combo advantage.
State,
but no, clearly. But then you have also the characters that have value because they don't die, like Steve. Because you hit Steve and like unless he has no resources, you have to at the very least be like, okay, I have to stand like, you know, not under him because that anvil's going to come, and I can't be right in front of him because minecart's going to come. So like you at the very least have to respect the specific spaces, and if that's the only spot you can hit him, you can't hit him anymore. Game and Watch, right? He, you know, has down air that you have to respect. He has go to ledge. I have a literal unreactable ledge jump. So like you have to play advantage so much more committal, and if you're wrong, you're going to get hit. Sonic, he has a frame 2 air dodge that he can mash literally all the time. He has mashing up B, which is so hard for a lot of people to deal with. And so in a game where advantage is super valuable and disadvantage is low-key even more valuable because extending your life is sometimes more important than shortening your opponent's, you know, that's the two different schools of thought of me versus ShinyMark, right? I'm like, I want to kill them in one hit, and ShinyMark's, I'm like, I want to get hit 8 times and not die. Like
That's
if I need to get
way
hit.
to put it, yeah.
But like Pikachu's great at both because you have ridiculous combos at low percent. He has arguably the best edge guarding in the game, right? So like there are so many characters that like let's give it an example of a bad matchup for the other character, which is the Belmonts, right? Pikachu versus the Belmonts. It's annoying to get in. Theoretically, he can just out neutral you the whole time. Oh, I backered him once.
Shake it.
Right. Like versus Dom, when I played him at the Genesis last year, he was playing amazing, and I hit him at 0 and he died like 4 times out of the 6 stocks. Right? Like I feel like it is so valuable to, and also scrambles, right? Scrambles are so important because like, oh, you miss the advantage or you miss the disadvantage, or like you get out a disadvantage, and suddenly it's like, hey, fight right now. And Pikachu has some of the best in the game of that because you have dash attack that, especially if you're both trying to do this, and you're going to get hit and die at 100, right? With bad DI. We have some of the best out of shield options in the game, and we have the at the very least second best disengaging move in the game being quick attack, right? So it's like if we want to just get out, we just go full hop, quick attack away. Whereas a lot of characters don't have that. I mean, Sonic has to like run, but if you have Sonic in a corner, he can't run through you. He has to at the very least interact. Whereas we can either go under the stage, like ShinyMark's been doing when he's scared, or we can just go, hey, you have to read ground quick attack or air quick attack. When also I can just be aggressive. Like the mental stack that Pikachu puts on people is ridiculous. But it means we also have to be playing well. Like we're not like Pikachu's not an autopilot character where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna like spam I'm gonna kill you at 90 move. Not gonna happen.
What do you think, ShinyMark?
There's this cliche of like the characters that have way too many options that the players themselves get overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. That comes up really often for Pikachu. We have so many mix-ups. That's also why sometimes we do really dumb stuff, you know? Stuff that like you go back and see and you're like, why did he do that? And it's like, I thought you were gonna be on layer 3, but you were on layer 1. So I got right, you know? So stuff like that happens really often. And I was gonna say, like, honestly, I've been I wouldn't put it like as fragility, but I would say like consistency is like in terms of like what Esam is talking about is what I was gonna say exactly as well. Yeah, like Pikachu can just choose not to die, choose not to interact. He can choose to like go under the stage and never get two framed. So stuff like that is like really, really valuable. Quick attack mix-ups from ledge. There's so many mix-ups you can quick attack 1-2 to center. Good. You can quick attack 1 to the stage. You can quick attack 1 to the ledge. You can quick attack 1 to the platform. You can quick attack 1-2 back to the corner. Quick attack 1-2 to like the top platform sometimes. You can instant wall jump. There's so many mix-ups with Pikachu on the ledge. It's ridiculous. So I feel like having something like that as a cushion on this advantage state to like consistently at least be able to mix up your opponent like 1 out of 5 times. That's great. Like it's actually so great, especially as a light character, you know. And the other thing I was gonna say that I'm valuing a ton, which is why this is definitely an unpopular opinion, but I think Steve is probably gonna fall off a little bit. I think Ramses has the same opinion actually. It's because of the movement. I value movement and like the ability to like reposition and be able to like win neutral. In terms of like just get in a range. Let me threaten this burst range. You know, let me force you to do something. Okay, let me get out right now. And now you did something. Let me win neutral. Let me do that over and over and over, and not take risks. And if you decide to like not commit it because I'm gonna whiff punish you or like force you to do something, okay, I am Pikachu. I have tjolt. I have really safe pokes. I have really safe chip damage and like down tilt, tjolt, forward air, quick attack whiff punishes.
Quick attack's broken. Quick attack's the glue. Quick attack's really low key Pika's best move because it makes everything better.
Exactly. So I feel like that's kind of like what I'm valuing right now, and also why I think like currently Pikachu and Sonic are better than Steve. So yeah, I think that's where the meta is going. Also, why I think Kazuya is falling off a little bit. Like he's obviously like still incredibly overtuned.
Riddles is playing Street Fighter.
That's true.
That's all it is.
That's true. But I definitely like relative when the character came out and like he was just like running over everyone. We played friendlies for like a good 2 hours in Battle of BC, and I was like, okay, this feels so much more comfy, you know? It was like, yeah, you're playing it so much better, you know? And then like, yeah, it's probably because I'm playing way more chip damagey. I understand way more like how to threaten the burst range and like be like right outside the range, so I can like empty hop in place, and then like if you do something, let me like use my drift and itself to like drift back, and then just get out of the space and then whiff punish you. You know, I feel like that's something that a lot of characters wish they could do like actively, and we can do it because like we literally have everything. Like I feel like Pikachu is one of the best characters in the game at like not doing or like doing nothing. Relatively like. If you commit, I have an answer for that, you know? Like, if you hit my shield, I have one of the best out of shields in the game. If you jump, I have a disjoint, you know? Like, I have the up tilt, I have the up air, I can catch landings really well with, like, my kill move dash attack, or I can, if you're, like, a sortie, you have, like, a big disjoint, I can, like, dash back right outside of the disjoint, and then quick attack right back. Like, it's not a huge punish, but, like, it's advantage, right? Like, it's gonna be quick attack 1-2, up air, juggle, nice. then like if you're not doing anything, if you're like trying to like jump in place over my tjolts because I'm not approaching, okay, I'm gonna throw another tjolt, I'm gonna get closer to like the burst range, and you either have to like commit, you have to shield the tjolt, or like the safest option for a lot of people against tjolt is like jump back, like just like jump back and like give you a little bit of space, and at that point like a lot of the time nothing happens, but what's happening there is I'm getting passive advantage in stage control, and then Pikachu's corner pressure is incredibly insane.
Ridiculous.
In terms of like the shield pressure from Pikachu is insane. If Pikachu hits you on the corner, you're gonna end up off stage, and if Pikachu like grabs you on the corner at certain percent, you have 50-50s and like down throw down air, down throw up air thunder, or you're gonna die earlier to something like bridges, even if you're like a floaty or something. So I think that's where Pikachu is really, really shiny. He has a really consistent mental toll on people, like really good mental pressure. And then if people decide to like commit to anything, generally it's up to us to like take the correct decision and gain like the passive advantage in terms of like stage control or like the chip damage or the pressure. I think shield poking is huge for Pikachu in the meta right now, and just
Dude,
like in general.
I've done it for years. It's great. It's so
great.
good.
I've been hitting people a lot with like actually let me not say it on Smash University. Let me save it for a tournament.
There you go.
But generally, like the biggest one right now is gonna be backer and forwarder. But there's also like I'm gonna say it, like Nair shield poking is really really insane after down tilts, down tilts and after thunder jolts. Generally, if you hit like a shield with like 1 or 2 hits, most characters get shield poked anyway. So you're stuck like angling your shield up if you know the matchup really well, but you're paying so much attention to that I can mix you up with something like falling backer and shield poke you from below or grab you. So Pikachu just has an answer to everything. It's ridiculous. It's just something that the Pikachu player has to be like incredibly aware at all times. But I feel like we're getting there. Yeah, we talked to each other about this recently, where Pikachu makes you feel like a dumb player, like a bad player sometimes, because he's a puzzle.
It's so hard. Yeah. I would say like the last thing I want to mention is I feel like in today's game, right? Like everyone, you can focus on the flaws of any character, right? You think of Steve, you think of mobility, you think of Sonic, and you think of like him burning his double jump, and then you can technically just beat out his spin moves if like they have to do it. And in my opinion, Sonic isn't good at approaching, right? And like Game & Watch has his lack of approaching. I think Game & Watch is super broken, so like I'm putting it in air quotes. But he's also like very light, right? And Aegis has their recovery and Cloud has their recovery, and like whatever matchup specific stuff. And like Pikachu's weakness is that's his weakness, right? He doesn't have an actual weakness. He has like conditional things of like, oh, in a matchup where you can't use T-Jolt and you're in the corner, it can be hard. But like that's not a Pikachu thing. That's this matchup can kind of be stressful thing, right? Like Pikachu, because we're short, we're constantly like the amount of times that I'm playing someone and they do something quote unquote right and it doesn't work because it's Pikachu, and I see out of the corner of my eye them go like just shuffle in their chair because they're pissed. Like, I mean, there's the famous clip of me versus Lima at a local, and he parried 3 hits of my Nair, and then I fast fell, and he grabbed, and it missed because I pancaked under it. Like, there are so many things of like, oh yeah, Pikachu's stupid in that way, and that way, and that way. And like, they might not be like the biggest deal, right? But there's so much that your opponent has to be aware of. I mean, it's one of the reasons I don't like the Pika Ditto, because I can't back air out of shield Pikachu landing back airing behind me because he's so short.
Yeah,
it's annoying.
One of the best pancakes.
And like every character has to deal with that. And
we have an answer for that actually. Footstool out of shield, quick attack
1. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're minus and you get hit. Great. But like maybe there are certain things that Pikachu can't do as well as some other characters, like footstool out of shield punishes, or just like, oh, you're at 100, kill move, right? Even though I still do that and it works sometimes. But it's very rare that you find a position where you actually go, Pikachu's weak here. It's like Pikachu maybe not as strong here, but like we talked about, like, oh, Pikachu's hardest at the mid percent, and then you just hit your opponent that one time and then edge trap him, and Pikachu has top 5 edge trapping in the game, in my opinion. Because of, you might not see it as much in ShinyMark's game. This is not a shot, just because you play on battlefield and small battlefield so often, and I think those are the 2 stages that edge trapping is the hardest, because we can't use tjolt reliably. But it's like a Samus thing, where like, hey, I have tjolt, do something, hit you for doing something, do it again, tjolt, hit you for doing something, right? I think I've gone over that when I talked about me versus Leo at Glitch, when I just like, he was on the ledge at 100, and I kept him there until 130, and then I forwarded him and he died because he had to do something, and the something he did got hit. And of course, even if we're wrong with the ledge trap, we just go, okay, cool, quick attack to the other side, just in case we like overcommitted, neutral. It's not like this characters that are going to get reversaled for trying to ledge trap. Like, even in a world where Fox misses a ledge trap and is somehow punishable, which that would be their fault, because Fox's ledge trapping is absurd. Specifically light, but like I see what he does, right? But like realistically, if he dash attacks and he's wrong, or he does that forward smash and he's wrong, and someone neutral get ups and throws him off stage, he's gonna die maybe.
Yep.
That's not gonna happen with Pika ever.
Yep.
Unless we're getting super hard outplayed player to player, in which case they got it as their person. It's not a character thing.
Yeah, nice. So Tony, did
So-
you have any questions?
I think that one of the criterion for deciding the effectiveness of a character is to ignore the best representative of a character and just focus on what the second best is getting results. And I think
I'm getting
that's-
results, baby, because he's the best one right now.
Is he? Well, where I was going with this was I think that's historically one of the main reasons why people overlook Pikachu through the history of the game, is because typically there's just been ESAM
There was
until
ESAM,
Ultimate.
yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
and now there's H4 and also ShinyMark, who are getting fantastic results, and then there's also ESAM on top of all of that. So there's a lot of information that actually supports it through the results. And so obviously there's always going to be a tension between theory on what the game should look versus the results of what the game is currently getting, and whether or not that's going to change. This is why characters like Pit were considered high tier in Brawl, because this character should be getting results, even though the character was not getting results outside of exactly Earth. So the idea there is that I think the same thing applies toward characters like Kazuya, where if your character's tournament results are based on whether or not Riddles is playing Street Fighter, then that character's results are probably getting propped up a little bit. So, with that said, going forward, ShinyMark, I know that you mentioned that you are working toward differentiating when to go in and when not to go in. And essentially there's a tension between that, because usually you can't advance a forward air or go in for an air while you're also going for timeout strategy. So, or timeout tactics. So even if you are overall going for a timeout, you can't do that while you're jumping into your opponent for the most part. So with that tension existing, how do you decide whether or not you're going for time or whether or not you're trying to go in for a specific setup? And this question goes for both of you, because I know you're both working on this decision-making paradigm.
Yeah. I think it definitely depends a ton on the matchup. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I'm a player that really actually I think we said this off stream. But I'm a player that like really prepares a ton for important matches. And once I'm prepared, I feel like I'm generally really good at studying players like once or twice, like for a VOD review, and then beating them immediately, you know? That's because I'm really, really prep heavy. I have to really understand like the interactions. But the ones I do, I feel like on top of Pikachu's like pressure that he has, you know, like I said, like he has a really, really good passive pressure, and like I'm gonna tjolt, and if you give me space, that puts you in a worse position, so I can now pressure you on the corner. So that's a lot more mental pressure for you, and now you're like super prone to make a mistake. And now I can pressure you, and even if I pressure you in like a wrong way and you're like shielded, probably nothing's gonna happen to me. And then now you shielded a forwarder, and now you're gonna get shield poked, you know? That's generally when I decide to go in, when I have like an inherent, even if it's like the smallest advantage, when I know that something is gonna probably hit, or that I conditioned you, or that you're like in a really really limited spot, that's when I approach. But otherwise, I'm really big on the mentality, and this is what I tell a lot of my students and Pikachus. On the mentality of like, if you don't have stage control or like an inherent advantage, don't go in. Just like play for um, gaining your ground, like earn the right to actually approach. And if not, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to approach. You have the better passive pressure, and eventually, like a lot of the time, people that are really really good at the matchup, like I feel like there's actually two spectrums. There's gluttony. Gluttony just
He's
knows the
so good
matchup
at the
like
matchup.
inside out. It's
Holy
ridiculous,
crap.
and it's because he has Neros and Enki as like basically like I think Enki is kind of like his training partner, and then Neros is like in his region. So obviously he knows everything. Like it's ridiculous. Like even with I don't know if the SDI limitations come into play against
Definitely.
us. It does. Okay.
I mean,
Um,
I played him. I've only played him once, and so like I'm not going to give as much of it. But like watching his set versus you, I
yeah,
was
I
like,
definitely
he could
saw it.
SDI bet. Like you were
Exactly.
hitting 2019 nair loops,
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
we can still nair loop, but there's a difference
And
between.
still, there was still a
He's
good amount of
handicapped.
yeah, there was still a good amount of awkwardness into comboing him, because like he
Yeah,
knows how to mix up DI really well. He knows what to do like in scrambles immediately after. He knows what's true, and like what drag downs are not actually gonna be true. Like I think one time I
and
did like
footstools
forward air drag
you.
down. Yeah, I did a forward air drag down, and he like immediately like mashed there and converted. I was like, okay, you know your shit.
Yeah, he's
um,
really on it.
for sure. So I feel like there's two spectrums. There's like Lutony that like really, really knows like everything about the matchup and decides to play passively for it to like get also like his passive reward, which is gonna be waft. And then just like counter poke Pikachu if he ever overcommits, and if not, he's fine just like holding his space. Because I feel like Wario is really good at like holding stage control, but I feel like he's not that great at like getting it back, if that makes sense, right? Um,
hmm
so I feel like that's one spectrum. And then there's the other incredibly ridiculous player at the matchup, which is Spargo, which does like completely the opposite in my opinion. He's
He fucks you up.
so insane at pressuring. I got a set recently, actually, like 2
Not
days
you.
ago.
I'm like the general you,
Oh
not
yeah,
like
like
you,
in
Shiny
general.
Mark.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
he
His
back airs
pressure
every T-jolt, and you just go, okay, I guess I can't
exactly.
T-jolt. And he gets you in the
He
corner, you go, eh.
he's like the only player that makes you feel constantly threatened whenever you're pushing any safe button with Pikachu. Especially Tjolt. Exactly, like Isa mentioned, like you get backered, which at that point you have to play a lot more with the conditioning of, okay, I'm gonna make it look like I'm good at Tjolt, but I'm not going to actually. So now
Debate
you're
the
going to
short
approach me
hop.
exactly and bait the short hop and either like interrupt him before he falls, or try to parry and play that minigame. Um, and he also is really really good at like actually running under the Tjolt. So he takes this approach where like he's like, okay, Pikachu's like really frail. I'm like really really mobile, and I have better range than you. So I'm just gonna like make you guess over and over and over and over. You're probably gonna be wrong, and because of the kill differential, you're probably gonna get out rewarded. If you're not like outplaying me in neutral. Which is
Or edge
really
guarding
really
every
hard.
stock.
Exactly. So I feel like with Tony's question on like when to go in and when not to, I feel like with Lutony's playstyle, um, the threat of like the timeout becomes so much more obvious at a certain point. Because like even if you're like holding stage and like going back and giving me a little bit of space and nothing's really happening because neither of us really want to commit, I feel like the poking game is generally always going to be in Pikachu's favor. The chip damage game is always going to be in Pikachu's favor. And then generally when I see like there's like 2 minutes on the clock, I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this. And then I start like like just T-jolting and playing for even more passive threats. Like if you give me stage control, I'm gonna like take it. But I'm not necessarily gonna commit because I don't want to take like a scramble at that point. And then there's what a lot of people didn't like about me in Masa, which is going under the stage. Generally, I don't really go for it for timeout unless there's actually like very very little time left for it. Because one, there's the threat of that you're gonna SD. Two, it's like really actually stressful. And a lot of characters can actually like get in the middle and like guess which side you're gonna go on and like try to two frame. The main reason why I'm going under the stage is literally because Pikachu is actually one of the easiest characters in the game to two frame. And there's some characters that two frame you to kill you at like 60. So obviously I don't want to take that. Like viewers,
I'm
you
so
gotta
tired of Sonic
understand.
Forward Smash.
Exactly, like it kills you at like
Or
50.
Wario. It's fucking
Exactly.
He hits every two frame.
He's really, really good. So like when you do that, you're probably also gonna waste time, And I feel like that's why Pikachu is really, really good at the threat of the timeout, because like if you see the timeout and you want to get it back, Pikachu is so good at like waiting for you to commit and then punishing you, and then if not, he's really good at like still pressuring you for like time wasting, and then getting like an even bigger lead, or nothing happens, and then Pikachu has the advantage in terms of mobility and quick attack, And then for the Spargo side of the meta against Pikachu, I feel like at that point he has to commit a lot more, obviously because he's like pressuring me constantly, But if I guess right, or if I am able to like slow down the game in terms of like mobility and like tjolting, I guess right once, and I get so much more reward, And then if I'm slowing the game down, you probably have to go into layer 2 or 3 to like outplay me, and that's going to be so much more mentally taxing for you. And then at that point, the game is probably not going to go into time because you're pressuring me constantly, but it's also probably going to result in you taking more risk and losing neutral way more often, if you're not reading it correctly. And for you to read it correctly, it's going to be like so tough, especially if the Pikachu player knows what they're doing, So yeah,
like,
it's definitely taxing, but like doable.
That's one of the things, in my opinion, that makes Pikachu so broken. Is I feel like so many people, when they lose, right? Like, again, no disrespect to these players. I have a lot of respect for them. But like Jackal this weekend, right? Gets 9th or whatever he got, and was just like, my character's so much fucking worse than these characters, and I'm expected to play that. And I'm not really making a judgment on accuracy of that statement or anything, but like anytime I have lost, other than, again, very specific matchups, the only thing I've ever complained about Pikachu is like, dude, Pikachu's so hard. But like, it's never like, oh, I didn't have the tools, I was outclassed, I was this, I was that. Like, it's either, oh, I messed up, or, oh, they played better than me. Like, it is almost, I have almost never, if maybe never. Again, matchups are one thing, but I've never been like, Pikachu is blank. I'll be like, dude, what do I do about Game & Watch, right? Or what do I do about blank? Or, oh, like as ShinyMark said, he's big on preparation. I'm not. Granted, that's me being why I'm getting 33rds and 25ths and not doing super well. Because like I rely on, I'll figure it out. But people are getting so good at like their advantage and how strong they are that like I don't have that time. And again, it's one of those things that in the matchups I know you're not beating me, right? Or you have to be like the best of that person, right? Like I'm not gonna lose to so many characters and players because like either I get how they play similar to me, and like I think ShinyMark is definitely more like, I'm gonna take the player out of the game. I'm gonna just use Pikachu against their character because Pikachu's broken, and I'm just gonna win. Whereas I do that in certain matchups, like the slower matchups, not like the timeout slow matchups, but the I can't just run forward matchups, like Lucina, because you have to T-jolt and wait for her to jump, and then quick attack it, and then T-jolt, and then like you're playing slow, repetitive neutral.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where I shine because I go, cool. Like it's because I've literally been an aggressive player my entire existence. Like I watch, like I'm like, why do I like approaching with projectiles so much? And then I look at myself play Samus, do missile, wave dash forward, and guess. I'm like, oh, I've been doing that since 2007, right? And that's where I'm comfortable. Is like, hey, I know your tools, you know mine. Let's guess. Right? Like I'm really good at that RPS, and Pikachu's RPS, like they're playing RPS and we're playing rock, paper, scissors, gun. Like we have an extra option and we can still be wrong. Right. And I think that's me versus, it was a lot closer than I thought in hindsight, me versus Shattuck when we played at SmashCon. He guessed right all the time. I was impressed at how often he guessed. Like he was always right, even, like regardless of if I was switching up or not. And like I had my misinputs and my flaws of how I played, but like he guessed right a lot. And you know, I feel like I'm just so good at being like, hey, so I hit you at approximately 42% at like this type of area. Are you jumping or air dodging? Oh, you're jumping? I'll remember that. And
Yeah.
I feel like my read cash outs are some of the best in the world, right?
Yeah.
It's why I'm able to get those game ending or set ending thunders, those game ending or stock ending edge guards. Like again, I've said this story a couple times on my stream, but like you know how I got my like victory at glitch with the 0 to death on Leo, right? So that was supposed to happen before the pandemic at Genesis the previous year. Literally the entire set. I'm like, I'm going to condition him to DI in and think it's safe. The entire set. I'm not going to go for the kill combo because at that point I knew how to do like the upper thunder stuff. I was like, I'm not going to do it because he's going to DI in because he's Joker and I'm going to miss my combos on purpose or get kind of mid punishes on purpose. And then when I either need to win because I'm about to lose, like whether I need to like stop losing or win the set, I'm going to cash out on upper thunder. And I was right. And then I hit the hit that would have killed him. I would have got 1-3-1 and I missed my RAR. So I didn't get the strong up air. And then he ended up winning because he's Leo. But like I'm really, because I've been playing for so long, I have the advantage of I understand the psyche of these people. Like I know what players are doing the right thing because it's the right thing, right? Like they're the studied players. They're the, I'm not going to mix up my DI because this is the right DI. Like why would I mix in the DI? And then I understand the people of, oh, I'm going to like switch it up and I'm going to make it awkward for them. And I kind of have that in my head if I've played them before or just, you know, from watching people just passively because I watch a lot of people on stream. And I get huge cash outs, right? Like I'll hit people really hard on DI out. I'm like, cool, well, I just dealt you 0 to 70 the last time I hit you at low percents from DIing out. So now you're going to DI in. And I already know, right? And I'm able to get like upper thunders or whatever combo I want to get, right? And I feel like in terms of like approaching or stuff like that, I want to figure out the puzzle. Right. Like I think the biggest difference between me and ShinyMark is, again, what are you going to say, like problem or problem solver? Right. Like Pikachu is both because Pikachu has all the tools to solve the problems or the puzzles of any character he wants. It might be risky, but he can do it. Or he's a really hard to solve puzzle because there are so many layers to the defense. And of course, like that's why I'm saying, like, if me and ShinyMark were to fuse, and again, like there have been other people that I've said this with, like in Smash 4, if me and Captain L, because he was the more passive Pikachu, just fused, if I just camped more, I'd be the best player in the world, right? Like people have always said that type of thing about me. Because realistically, a layer to defense is offense, which is why ShinyMark, once he started getting his combos a lot better, suddenly became a significantly scarier player. It's not because, oh, he's hitting me 0 to 70. It's, oh, you know, someone trying to approach him when he's playing defensive. It's like, if I'm wrong, I'm going to get bodied.
Yeah.
Not inherently scared of the combo, but scared of the, if I'm wrong, I'm going to get hit really hard, right? And so I feel like when it comes to approaching versus not approaching, I've always been stubborn, right? And I've been like, hey, if I lose a matchup enough, I'll be like, fine, I'll camp, right? The biggest one for me is Peach. Like I've, you know, very historically at the beginning of Ultimate, very bad versus Peach because I'm like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to beat her back air. I got it. Can't do that. That character's broken, right, Ramses?
It's a really good move, yeah.
So like, you know, it goes through, you know, I tjolt, she backers the tjolt and it's unpunishable or it's hard to punishable.
GG.
So like, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to straight up, especially like with the move, like you're not winning a trade with that. But you can like shield and nair it. So I'm like, okay, screw it, camping. And then I camped, and the last time I think Mutas had controller issues the last time I played him, but like it looked pretty dominant on my end because I'm just winning neutral and, you know, not approaching. And my default is to approach until I lose enough that I'm like, fine, I'll camp. Whereas ShinyMark is like, I'll play passive and find my openings. And then if I can kill you, I can kill you. So like, again, I think right now his style makes way more sense, right? In a meta of like I kind of trust Pikachu to be good enough that I can be silly. but it's really hard to be silly and stubborn in this meta because people are just so good.
I think
something
in
I've said to
general.
ShinyMark. Oh, go.
Oh, go ahead. What I was gonna say, I think in general, most characters in this game are kind of subpar at approaching. So by definition, a playstyle that kind of like aims to make it hard to get approached is just gonna do well in the engine.
Yeah. I think a big thing of that is like people can't go run power shield anymore. Like
Yeah.
shielding is more of a commitment to get a parry, and then if you're wrong on the parry, most characters can't get anything off of it. Even though Pikachu, a lot of the times can if it's like spacing, like if they're close.
And whiff punishes have died. Like you jump in aerial, there's no lag, right? So like in general, approaches they're generally done through the air because of how much stronger they are than ground approaches, which also makes it a little bit more linear. And then it all comes down to like how good is your character at doing like these aerial approaches. So if you look at like the characters that can approach, like Sheik, Roy, Cloud, they all have like really good jump in aerials, right? So yeah, it's just all been centralized on this like one path, and all the characters that cannot do that don't have good approaches. So if you have a character that can shut that down too, which Pikachu, like he's just small and nimble, it just becomes really hard to approach a character like that.
Yeah. Like one thing that I say to ShinyMark, and I mean, I would say he's definitely getting more towards my side, which is will be a compliment, is I feel like, and I've literally said this in the group chat, so like this isn't like a new thing that ShinyMark's heard. Like I feel like ShinyMark is a player that is much harder to beat than me, right? Like it's a lot harder to be like, I know how to beat ShinyMark. Like, how do you beat ShinyMark? It's a hard answer, right? It's like be better. Whereas like, oh, like Esam will get aggressive and Esam like will quick attack, like he won't grab ledge and he'll do all these things that I do, right? But I know how to beat more players, right? Like I have more of an X factor at the he's getting there, which is a huge compliment because like I finally yelled at him enough to fucking thunder.
I'm thundering.
Do you know how many times I've yelled at him in H4? They're like, dude, thunder's so scary. I'm like, it's so much scarier to get hit by thunder than to get back aired at 50 for thundering, unless you're playing against Bowser specifically. And I still do it to my brother, like, and I'll just die. It's fine. But like, I have the X factor and I found the puzzle piece quicker. And that's why, like, even when I was like this is the lowest I've ever been ranked. I'm not ranked. That's partially because I'm not traveling very much. But, people are always like, I'm sure there are a ton of literally top echelon players that are like, I don't want to fucking play Esam. That dude's scary. Right. And, I'm sure there are a lot of people now, especially after his Maza performance, that are like, oh God, I don't want to play ShinyMark because he's getting way stronger at this stuff. But like, I always, again, want to, I guess the word is like, I want to make sure that the way I have fun is by figuring out the puzzle. And I like being a puzzle piece or like, a confusing puzzle, but way less. So like, I'll be camping and then suddenly I'm approaching for 2 minutes because I like forgot. I got bored. I forgot. But like, that's one of the things, like, I feel like I'm definitely getting better at that overall. Cause I feel like how I played at CEO was much more passive in general than other times. But then like, I'm also running at riddles. So like, that's my most passive I've ever been,
Never run at riddles.
I haven't been playing.
Yeah, the one person you don't want to run at.
Hey, man, I should have won. It's fine. But I don't know. Pikachu's just he's so expressive, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. He just has all the tools to do anything you want, and a character, and he can excel in every way. Again, like I have winning records on 3 of the top 5 players, and I blah blah. Accolades. But at the same time, that character can just peace up 30%. You know the vibes.
You know the vibes.
And whoever made that meme, because I don't think it was actually Sonic's, has done. That's like the biggest service anyone has done for the Smash community in years.
And also for his brand.
I'm saying for all of us, for anyone just like having that concept. And like it's so interesting because like right now the meta is really diversifying into killing you off of a hit. Think SkyJ, right? Like
Mhm.
SkyJ's literally going like, I should lose all these. I'm gonna be right, and then he's right a lot. He's right so
I'm gonna
much.
get the read and win.
And he's right. Like the amount of wins that not ShinyMark SkyJ has is like insane. And then there's the I want to be consistent and just be like I want to I want to not lose versus I want to win. Like winning through not losing versus winning through you're the one creating that consistent scenario. Not to again, I'm not saying like one's better or worse.
And then Pikachu can be both.
Pikachu can be both. Because I mean, there are tournaments. I feel like if I have a bracket of matchups I'm super comfortable with, I'm gonna destroy people, right? And I'm not gonna go to game 5 with SkyJ because I'm just gonna edgeguard him. But like, I'm not beating Gluto. I'm not beating Gact with Pikachu. I might beat him with Mew Brawler, but like, I've been so impressed with ShinyMark's ability to consistently get far and good placements when his controller isn't shitting the bed. Which I'm so sorry that happens. Like that's so like I literally people are like, what controller should I play with? I'm like, don't play with Pro Controller.
Yeah,
like
I tell them everyone the same thing.
It's tragic, but like it is. I mean, it's been a long time since I've ever really been like, oh, I'm not. There's like, obviously, if you can debate, you can still, if you really want to, say I'm better than ShinyMark, right? And for my ego, sometimes I say it, and I say it in comments because I don't want every single person on my stream to be like, "Oh my god, you think ShinyMark's better than you?" Because it's, it's annoying. Just like the consistent thing, right? But I mean, it has been a lot. I mean, I've been the best Pikachu since 2010 until 2023. I might get it back. I'm trying to, right? Like I'm not letting you be the best for too long, Marcus Barkus. But I mean,
Gotta learn the timer first.
It's
yeah, he has to learn the vibes. Yeah, he has to learn the vibes. Yes,
I have to learn the vibes. And
I wanted to add one thing to what we were discussing right now. Actually went to both Ramses and Tony for certain questions. When I was kind of figuring out Pikachu, or not figuring out, because I was like pretty top level at that point still.
Developing Pikachu.
Developing Pikachu, at least like certain pieces that were missing.
Are, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But like one piece that I was missing for a long time was first I went to Ramses about this, was like I was for the longest time gameplay junkie, as he would call it.
Game plan junkie. There you go.
Exactly. So what this means is to what we were talking about like the me preparing for matchups. I'm a player that likes to, have the correct answer, have like a checkmate situation in neutral, and then go from there. But then I was struggling against this top 5 player called Sonics. And I was like, dude, Ramses, I'm struggling, and I don't find an answer. This character has no checkmate positions. He has a few, but like in relative and neutral, I was looking for something obvious. And we discussed a good amount about like the just conditioning players, like this might seem obvious to like talk about, but actually understanding it when game plans took you so far into top level for the longest time is actually really, really hard to implement,
It's a huge jump because like game plan, it's like your tools, right?
Exactly.
And you gotta make the transition from game plan being like your end goal to game plan being a tool to reach like your ultimate end goal, which is the information that you get. And then like the game plan is gonna streamline the information that you get.
Correct.
Right?
The difference between flowchart and adaptability, right?
Exactly.
Like a flowchart can be really good as a starting point or as a farther than a starting point. I mean, there's plenty of people, top players that have been like, I'm just going to game plan the entire time and then I win. But then you play players that doesn't work and you go, oh no, I have to think.
Yeah.
Well, I think flowcharts are still like very powerful. It's just like the most important improvement for flowchart is like having the right branches. And I think a lot of people, they kind of like, they have like, for example, right, like I have this aggression flowchart, and then all of your decisions exist within the aggression flowchart and can be very well developed. And it's still not going to let you win, because sometimes the choice of being in the aggression flowchart is the wrong one, right? So the more layers, yes, Esam, sometimes, so the more layers you can exist on, right? Whether it's like a strategical decision, a situational decision, an interaction-related decision, a psychological decision, a mood-related decision, a fatigue-related decision, right? Like the more of those layers you can exist on and incorporate into your game plan, to the degree that it's no longer about the game plan, but the information that lets you make the choices within it. That's really like the top level goal at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when I started implementing that, like, and also that's like part of like what Esam was telling me to do, you know, like, thunder more, read people more, you know. But to me, like, the thing I valued the most was like having a consistent game plan, and just in general be consistent, you know. Like, I don't care if I don't get like a thunder, I'm gonna get 2 uppers, 12%, and call it a day, you know. That's gonna be consistent and safe. And then I'm gonna juggle in a way that I can land instead of stage and keep stage control, you know. That's consistent and that's good enough for me. But then I realized that sometimes you need to outreward players and play the player-to-player situations a lot more, which is what Esam was telling me and what Ramses really elaborated for me, you know. And that's why sometimes when you see me play, you know, I'm playing passive for like 3 minutes, and then and this is where actually eventually I talked to Tony about this. I asked him like, how good do you think Pikachu is in terms of like going for timeout from 0, you know? And basically the conclusion that both Ramses and I gave me, Ramses and Tony gave me, sorry, was you're a player that can play really passive, really correct for a long time, but you can use that time to eventually condition a big hit, you know?
Cash out, baby.
Exactly, and that's why, like, eventually, like, I'm not even talking about like jump reads and neutral, or not in neutral, with like thunders and stuff like that, or just like double jump fair, etc. I'm more talking about like reads in actual neutral. I'm playing just, you know, like really passive, really correct neutral, if I would say that, for a long time, and then eventually you see me run across the stage and grab you, you know, like that's a big risk, but it's something that was conditioned for a good amount of time, you know. And then people are like, okay, I cannot play this passive anymore. Let me do this next thing. And then I'm ready for the next thing. And then that just becomes a huge snowball. And that's why sometimes you just see Pikachu destroy characters, because he has the ability to like read you a few times and you just explode, you know?
In already favored positions for us.
Exactly. Like there was one time in the Gluto set where I sent him off stage at like 60. It was literally just like a poke. It was like a 4 there, I think, on the corner. Sent him off stage, he drifted in, and I was like, just fast fall downer, you know? Like, I didn't do that the entire set, and that was a kill at 60, you know?
It was the only time you did it, the entire set.
Exactly, correct.
Because you were like, oh, well, you're like being passive and trying to like ledge trump me, so I'm not worried about the position here. Oh, yeah. I needed to be worried about that position.
Exactly. So I feel like I'm really getting the hang of like mixing something that's like correct, you know, in terms of a game plan, and then mixing something that's gonna be conditioned
scary.
For and scary, exactly, that conditions for a even bigger reward later, which oftentimes if you get that bigger reward is game winning, you know, which is absolutely huge at top level. And ever since then, I know it's Coinbox, but you know, I've been trading sets with Sonics, which is great.
He's really good.
He is incredible, yeah, he's a top 5 player. Then I was playing, you know, Spargo has been like my biggest mind block ever since I made this change, because he's the player that plays probably player-to-player interactions the best in the world. So I was trying to play that against him, and obviously I was getting out rewarded, you know. But then this past weekend we had a local, you know, here in Guatemala. He came to visit, and we played, and we actually traded sets, you know, because I was then mixing the game plan part of like, let me slow it down enough so that you actually have to play a lot more player interactions, and then I know what those player interactions are going to be, because you are playing to what you think is correct, because you know what I'm gonna do that is correct, if that makes sense. Okay, I know that was a long statement. And then the next player
on that in a sec.
Yeah, I think you can word it better. But I think it's understandable, and we actually traded sets. Then, I was. He told me after the set, he was like, "Okay, you actually made me super scared in neutral. When you hit me, I actually felt like I was going to die. So I took a lot of more preemptive decisions. I got a good amount of thunders. I got a good amount of air dodge reads. I challenged his startup on the fair off stage, which was something that I was not doing at all, which is huge against Cloud. Um, and then he was like, "Yeah, I can tell. Like you were putting the work to beat me. So keep doing that because you're on the correct path for sure. Which is exciting because like right now I feel like the big two players that are um, stopping me because I genuinely feel like I could win a major right now, skill wise, bracket wise.
Same.
The two the two players that are kind of constantly stopping me right now are Meister and Spargo. So be for Spargo to tell me that and for me to like trade sets, even if it was local, is really exciting.
That's huge.
Mhm.
Exactly. And then the
Any dub
other
over
guy,
Spargo is a dub over Spargo.
yeah, exactly. And then the other guy is Meister, which to me is it's tough because it's obviously like Pikachu's losing matchup. But I feel the way to make that winning is also with the same style I'm going towards, basically, which is play correct style for most of the game, get a good conditioning, and then once you get that big opening or like small opening, it doesn't really matter. From that conditioning, you just run away because Game and Watch cannot catch you, and he's really near. And then if he approaches you, that's gonna snowball. Obviously, you have to avoid like the huge dumb kill potential that Game and Watch has. But I feel like that's definitely a more of a player to player thing. Um, and I genuinely think that the timeout meta, at least for that matchup specifically, is could result in an almost auto win situation. So that gets me really really excited for the future once I keep improving. I'm probably gonna lose a few more times. But from that losing, I'm gonna get even better analysis. I'm gonna get even better experimentation, and I know I will eventually get there. So that's really exciting, and I really gotta thank you two, Tony and Ramses, for that enlightenment, and also Esam for screaming at me to like
I
take
scream at you a
risks.
lot
Yeah, he
because
really
I want
does.
you to win.
But I also scream at him a lot about neutral and like camping, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's true.
Good
I think
trade-off.
a good way to think about it is like every player is limited by their character, right? And you can push
For
that
sure.
so far because like
Except
it's
Pikachu,
super
they're not limited.
objective what a character can do and cannot do. But on the other hand, like every character is also limited by their player, right? So
Mhm.
like if you can work on both of those layers, that's really like the difference between high and top level to me.
Yeah. I'll just really quickly say two things. I think your last set versus Meister is a perfect example of you were just doing the right thing and you were so scared and you were like, I'm only playing for timeout. And it was like you both had two stocks. You were
Yeah.
at like 40, he was at like 110. And then you decided to never use the move that killed ever. And then you eventually died at like 90 to a Game and Watch thing. And like you
Exactly.
lost because of it. And then the set snowballed. And I was
You
like,
need
oh
a
my God,
balance.
if you dash attacked a single time, in 3 minutes, you would have won the set or the game at the very least.
And it's really good risk reward because you only get up beat, and then
Or
if you DI the
grabbed.
up beat well, you don't get hit by anything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
So it's
like,
fine.
and I think one of the biggest things, like this is an example. And again, I like making these disclaimers because people clip stuff out of context. This is no shots at this player. But I'm sure Tony, you know the player blank. And I think Charles, you might be aware of her. Or I don't know
Sheik,
who's aware
right?
of her. The Sheik player from
Sheik.
Florida. She was an absolute proponent. This is Smash 4. Of like, I'm going to do the right thing. And like, she had ridiculous tools and made sense to always do the right thing. But like, when I would play her, I would destroy her. And she's like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm doing everything right. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're doing everything that is right. So I know what you're going to do. So I just do something that's going to beat those.
That was
'Cause
me for the longest time. Yeah.
Because everything always has an option to beat it, other than like very particular, drawn out. There's not that much time on the clock. You're down this much percent, but like every move
It's rock, paper,
has a
scissors.
counter. There's always going to be a decision that wins, right? Which is why I tell them like, how do you beat this move? I'm like, oh, we'll do this, and they're like, what if they do this? And I'm like, guess right.
RPS.
Just be right, or don't interact, right? But like she'd be like, yeah, but like I'm doing all these like good things and like I'm always going for like this and like I'm always being safe. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna overshoot. I'm just gonna hit you for it. I'm just gonna YOLO because I know that you're not gonna do something that I'm scared of because I know what you're gonna do because you're always doing the thing that makes sense. And that, it's great to get to the 95th percentile or even the 98th percentile of players by always doing the right thing. But you're never gonna get higher than that because people know what the top players know what's going on. We know what people are doing. We know exactly. I don't know why I have my Discord. I've had my Discord on the side monitor for so long, and I've been looking off camera when I can literally put it here. So dumb. But like, you need to do things that aren't right sometimes, because if you're only doing things that make sense, players will recognize that, and players will be able to extrapolate. Oh, you're going to do the right thing, which means that in all these situations, the thing that makes the most sense, you're going to do it, and then they can hit you for it, and they can be ready for those situations. Because again, everything has a counter, which I feel like that's my strength, is the players that do that. Even the super top players are like, I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to like always be ready for the right situation. And I'm like, well, are you ready for me to run up in forward smash when I'm a death percent and you're at 80? And they're like, no, why would I be ready for that? And I'm like, because you died, right? And of course, that's a riskier way to play. It's why that I'll do that versus players that aren't necessarily going to be that passive or that, correct, and I'll be wrong and I'll die for it. I'll be like, oh, well, yeah, okay, you got it, right? Like there's no reason all these top players are forward smashing on or neutral get upping into my forward smash at ledge, but I condition them and I scare the hell out of them. And then I do something that is like dumb and beatable and like easily beatable, just ledge jump, right? But it works because they don't know, they're scared, and I put fear into them. So you have to do both.
I think the lesson in the whole like game plan and growing from their story is that like you gotta know the rules to break them properly. If you don't know the rules, then you're just doing random shit. But if you know the rules, then you can break them in a way that makes sense. So like what I see, like the most successful path to the top in my experience is kind of like learning the game plan, getting into that game plan junkie mindset. And then once you know all the rules, you just like you shit on them. It's just like you don't think about the rules anymore because you understand them at such an intuitive level that it's no longer about the rules. And then, like I said, they become like the tools. And for you especially, Esam, dude, you've been in the game so long. The rules are just like part of your psyche. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where you come in and you're just like, all right, fuck all the rules. I'm breaking them all. And that's also why, like, if we look at current games, and again, no shots, I think like as the rules change, it's important to also like take a step back and reintegrate like a new dynamic so that you can start breaking them correctly again.
Yeah, exactly. I 100% agree. Like, I think that's one of the most, I have this happen in like lessons or in my streams, where people will ask like, hey, why do you do that? And I'm like, because it was right. And, I always like, that's always like with so many like assumed parentheticals, right? Like if you're breaking down sentence structure in English, you're like, hey, you can have like a really simple sentence with a bunch of like implied meanings. Like, oh, I just felt like it was right because I understand that what they were doing off the ledge, and because I've recognized that they had the same ledge timing, and because I've already hit them for doing this thing before, and because this situation, like, there's no reason that when I land on people's shields, 90% of the time, I'm like, they're going to roll in and I just dash an up smash and it works versus everyone. Because, what option do you have when Pikachu lands behind you? Nothing really, unless very specific characters. So a lot of people will just jump away. And then a lot of times what I do, especially like this works a lot on top players. I remember Sharp was one player that was like, oh my God, what do I do about this? It was like, I would landing nair behind him as Joker and he would jump and I would just up air him. Like I would literally go landing there full up air.
That
and
feels
he's like,
so good to do.
And he's like, what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. And so like, he verbalized that when we were practicing one day, and he's like, and I was like, guess better. You're going to jump because it makes sense. Right. And then the next time that happened, he rolled and I just went nair dash up smash. And he was like, God damn it. I'm like, what the, that's so stupid. I was like, correct. And you can hit that on Tweak, on Leo, on Light, like the amount of random ass shit I hit on people because I just understand how panic works because I've been putting people in panic situations forever, right? Like I've made the best players in the world panic over 4 titles, because I've also beat like top 10 players in Melee. I don't know. I beat West Balls one time. I don't know how that happened.
Flex.
And Javi, the Super Smash Brothers Brawl for the old heads. But like it can be really overwhelming to learn all these things, and that's why sometimes people will struggle with DLC characters that are different, right? Because it's like, hey, they're not playing by the same rule. They're not playing the same game. It's like, okay, well, figure out their
Rules
game.
are different,
as you said. And then Steve has an entire whole the rules from Fairly Odd Parents rulebook, and you're like, that's a lot of things I have to remember for one matchup.
Yeah.
One thing that happens really often to me in lessons in Metafy, is that people tell me, "Hi, ShinyMark. I'm a Pikachu player. I've been more leaning to the ESAM style, but I don't do it as well. Why is that?" And then I'm like, you gotta understand the rules. Do you know what stage control is? Do you know what burst range is? And they're like, no.
I talk about overshooting so much in my lessons. They're like, how do you back your people? I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, let me explain to you stage control. Let me explain to you, like the unreactable ranges, stuff like that. I think a playstyle like ESAM's, that is very reliant on educated guesses, is something incredibly hard to replicate. I think it's probably impossible to replicate because it comes from so much experience. Like this guy's been playing the game for almost
longer
since
than
I was born.
Spargo's been alive.
That's true, exactly. So he just has so much experience, and the thing that's really hard for a lot of people to break, even in like top level itself, like probably like bottom top level or like top of high level, is finding that balance with the other side of the coin. Like being correct and being down to guess wrong, or being down to take gambles is what I'm trying to say, right? And generally that's going to be like such a hard thing to break by yourself. You kind of need someone to tell you that, or you kind of have to realize that by like VOD reviewing over and over and over, and being able to tell like why the super top players are winning and why you're not. So I guess the anecdote here is get a coach, because they're gonna tell you like what you're lacking for sure.
Yeah, the different perspective always helps.
Something that Gluttony actually had an issue with against ShinyMark that he didn't have against ESAM or Inky or Neros is actually how ShinyMark pressured his shield. So that showed more so in the winner's set, and obviously he had an answer in the loser set once he better understood the dynamic.
Interference on losers.
I figured that's what the SDs were. Like I saw you SD once, and I was like, I'm done watching. Like this isn't your controller's
I SD'd against Fargo. Then it got fixed in the last game, but I think I was overly tilted because of the interference. And then against Gluto, there was on the first game I was winning by a ton, but then I remember I did like a forward smash and neutral came out, which was a dash attack whiff punish, and then I was like, oh no, not again. And then like it snowballed. I lost the first game, and I was like, didn't know the vibe.
GG's. It's over.
Pro GCC V3 is coming out soon though, so I hope that really helps it out. But yeah, sorry Tony, go ahead.
Oh no, let's hope that this is the one that makes the difference. But,
for sure.
My question here is, what is it that you do differently from the other Pikachus against Block that was so difficult for Gluttony in that winner's set?
In terms of like shield pressure?
Yes.
Okay. I feel so whenever I'm preparing for a matchup, there's a few things, and this is what everyone should do, like know the frame data on like important moves, know the unreactable ranges on like combo starters, know like that if your toolset can get out of shielded, that you have to bait it out like either with movement or like just feints, so I feel like that's something that Gluto was not expecting me to be so prepared and informed for, basically. So basically, a lot of the time when I was challenging him in neutral, it was in ways that was accompanied by my tjolt, where I could like go behind my tjolt, run up down tilt because I know that's like completely safe, and then like either shield or dash back, and just like get that small shield pressure and probably work for like an eventual shield poke, which definitely happened a good amount of times in that set. Yeah, for sure. And then I think I was watching, I think it was ESAM versus Gluttony right before the set.
I got bodied.
I saw that he got a bead out of shield a ton, so I was making it like seem that I'm gonna like hit his shield. Like I was actually like jumping right on top of him, and I definitely got a lot of like tomahawk shields, to punish him. So that was like one of the biggest things, and I feel like that's one thing that actually gets forgotten about Wario. That his out of shield is actually like really really fast, and it does like
Crazy
18% for no reason.
Yeah.
So that's why I said earlier that Wario is a really really good character at like holding his space because he has incredible movement, he has incredible out of shield. But if you know how to like pressure it safely, he eventually has to start committing, and then he's stubby. You can like slightly outrange him. You can outrange him with Pikachu, which is crazy to say actually.
Mhm.
And yeah, I felt like I was just like always a step ahead, at least on the winner's side, in terms of like what the layers were going to be about the shield pressure. Like I was baiting out of shield, so he got punished by like doing a preemptive up B, and I punished him. So next time he held shield, I just ran up grabbing him. And then later on the set, it became more sweaty, more ambiguous. And I also was not trying to get risks or do risks. So I was playing a lot more for just like safe shield pressure and get stage control. Like I was content not getting like a direct punish, but still like putting a little bit of fear into him, which eventually was going to give me, like if he jumps, if he jumps out of shield, I can probably like catch the landing. If he jumps back, I get stage control. I can set up another tjolt, and I feel like that was one thing that I was doing like really excellently. That said, was
Mhm.
just like I barely got punished for tjolting ever.
Yeah.
Because I was playing a lot with the conditioning of I know that you want to stop me from tjolting, so I'm the situations where I know that you're like inside my range to pressure tjolt. I'm gonna make it seem that I'm gonna tjolt, but I'm not going to actually. So we're just gonna scrap, and then if you
Mhm.
scrap wrong, I win neutral.
I
And
think
then if you
the
don't scrap wrong, nothing happens. I get stage control, I get passive
yeah.
pressure, and that's it.
I think that one of the things that separates me and ShinyMark a lot is I always want T-Jolt on screen. Like if I have any time to pretend to T-Jolt, I'm T-Jolting. And ShinyMark is down. Like he literally plays without T-Jolt for like
Yeah,
minutes
a
at a
lot of the
time.
time. Yeah.
I think one of the things that, just to expand on it, because I have a slightly different perspective, is because ShinyMark's not going for the hit, right? Like he's not trying to get a back air or get a, like he's not doing like the immediate rising aerials all the time. Sometimes he is because they're good moves. But he's not like, when I play, I'm like, I'm going to T-Jolt back air or I'm going to forward air. And I'm not really, again, because I play risk reward, I'm like, I'm just going to do the things, right? Whereas I feel like ShinyMark was, because he was always playing for stage control and he showed like, hey, if you give me stage control or even if you scare me, I'm out. I'm peace out. Like I'm going to go to ledge. Every time you jumped, it was a much more complicated decision, even from the beginning of the set, because you can do delayed nairs, instant fairs, instant back airs, delayed forward airs, empty jumps. You're not even T-jolting. There's down tilts there. Like there were so many times that like you would landing aerial on Gluto's shield, like in a way that was unsafe, right? Like there was one specific or two specific times I remember where you would go like short hop nair, and just do it a second time and it would hit
Oh
him the
yeah,
second
the
time.
corner.
Yeah, that happened twice, and it's because you were so like it's the Spargo thing, right? Where, and this is obviously getting compared to Spargo as a compliment, where like realistically, the reason that like you see a lot of mid-level clouds get destroyed is because they're back airing and forward airing the exact same way every time. Because going back to, it's a good option. Whereas the amount of like, I can tell when Spargo's gonna like win a tournament by the amount of grabs he's getting,
Oh
because
yeah.
he's so aware of the game that people have to play against his character, and he's just like, hey, instantly grabbing you. And his grab sucks, right? It doesn't even get him that much. I mean, it gets him like corner, just like how Fox's grab is bad and he throws you off stage and you get ledge trap forever. Um,
It's
but
so
like
shocking when he grabs at like him
yeah,
at 150%, and he's
and he
like,
forward throws you and you're like,
yeah, let me get
yeah,
my small reward, and it's
it's
like
crazy.
you're like shocked. You're like, you went for that? Like,
And like that's one of the benefits of Pika, is because we have such amazing, right? We have, I would say, overall the best rising aerials in the game, like by far, probably, because we have multiple.
Oh, there's
Mostly
Falco.
Falco, you
Falco.
said? I think Pikas are better.
which character?
Falco.
Falco. I'd rather get my back air than a Falco forward air, even if it's
Yeah.
like the fast fall up tilt thing. But like,
I got the reward, but I feel like the balance that we have between backer combo-ness and fair safeness is
no,
I wouldn't trade
and
that for anything.
again, your layer of I'm not even going to do the rising aerial. I'm going to do the slingshot retreating kind of forward air, or the nothing, or the landing nair, right? We have such a good mix up of landing aerials versus rising aerials versus don't do an aerial at all. And it's ironic because like some characters force you into mix ups by being really fast, right? Like Fox full hops, and you're like, okay, well, you're going to down air, are you going to nair, are you going to double jump to try to bait something? Are you going to like full hop? Empty jumps with Fox are good, which is crazy because he's just so fast, right? But Pika, because we're slow, it's ironically also very good because we have such amazing rising aerials that like you have to be worried about the fair and the backer, because if you're not, you get steamrolled, right? Like if you can recognize, oh, they're not respecting my rising aerials, they're not dashing backwards, they're not shielding preemptively, you just hit them and kill them, right? But then you have the mix up of like, I'm really bad. Like I empty jump as every character I play other than Pikachu, because I'm just like, aerials are broken. Why would I not aerial? And that's something that ShinyMark does tremendously well, is he makes even his aggressive neutral decisions, or his like pressing neutral decisions, so much more ambiguous. And it leads him to get openings that I'm like, damn, that makes sense. That's so smart. You're scaring these people. And then they're doing like weird out of shield options and they're missing. And, you know, like I feel like that sometimes when I'm at like peak, like I'm in your head, whereas that's just like how you play neutral.
Yeah. I definitely aim to change rhythms a lot, which is something that Pikachu can excel in tremendously. Like
Oh yeah.
between falling and then rising, like there's so many rhythms.
Staying on the
And
ground.
a lot of people view being floaty in that aspect as a limitation, which I think I can agree. Like for the most part, I think for Pikachu, the way he works with his rewards and like the multi-hit mix-ups, the safeness, the shield poking,
Landing
the
hitboxes.
tomahawk, the grab reward, like there's so much to it. So
You also have a special
I,
that can cancel your floatiness and like get you to the ground with the hitbox being
Yeah,
quick attack.
exactly.
Like that.
That's why I've been
That's the thing.
dabbling with Quick Attack 1, which is something
good.
that I
So
never
broken.
saw other Pikachus dealt with, honestly. Like
I did it in Smash 4.
and Smash 4, I was going to say, exactly. But then I started experimenting with it. The first time I actually started doing it was in Collision. Like, I think it was playing, it was either Leo or Ling.
I think it was Ling.
I think it was Ling, yeah. He was being ready. He has G Extreme in his region. He knows the matchup really, really well. And he was like being super ready for Quick Attack 1-2s. And from my practice, I was already dabbling with it. But then I was like, let me just mix up Quick Attack 1 a few times, you know? And in theory, it's also unsafe, but because you're playing with rhythms and reaction time, you know, people are like ready for Quick Attack 2, so they're like, Quick Attack 1, okay, let me time my parry or like my shield for like Quick Attack 2, and then it never comes out, so you just run up and grab them, or like run up and dash attack them, or if you want to be extra safe, run up down tilt, etc. Yeah. So rhythms are huge in this game, but for Pikachu, he has so many mix-ups, it's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. So
My final question
what's up?
is probably the one I get most about Pikachu as a character. How do you counter tjolt for the viewers watching at home?
Well, you can. There's a couple of ways to do it, which again, all have ways to beat it for Pika, which is why I like solving the puzzle, right? You can do a lingering aerial that hits the tjolt and then continues to come out. You cannot do this with ground moves unless it's a specific ground move, because it will ping with the ground move. You will both like the tjolt and you are in lag, and Pikachu's just there. The amount of times that I see someone do a ground move on my tjolt, and I'm like, ooh, cool, up smash, dash attack, whatever move I need to hit at the time, is crazy. There is
Sometimes
obviously
it's not horrible because the hitbox comes out.
it depends
but generally,
on the move, but
you want
yeah.
to do the area.
Like you don't want to forward tilt as Lucina, because you're gonna be like
exactly,
and then be stuck. So aerials are much better for that. Good luck though, because it sometimes can be really annoying, because you'll just be hit out of the air and then get dash attacked or up smashed anyway. There's always parry mix-ups, right? But parry isn't an auto win, because if you're gonna parry, do a move, we can just go tjolt, shield, punish the move, or sometimes we can just get there first, right? If we're really close to the tjolt. So like honestly, the best option, high key, is jump to a platform and just like not engage. But again, that's giving Pikachu stage control, and that's letting you Pikachu like directly have an advantage situation of I'm going to forward you on the platform. I'm going to poke with you with up airs. I'm going to hit your landing whenever you decide to get off the platform. But I would definitely say the best option is just go to platform, but like good luck the situation afterwards.
Or like jump back in general. I feel like retreating in a non-interactive way is generally the safest, least common way to get punished, if we were to put it that way.
But then if we do
that's
punish
still
you,
exactly.
it's a
But
bad position.
then that's still giving us a passive win condition, which is unfortunate for you. For like, that's the reason why it's one of the best projectiles in the game. It's ridiculous.
Play Mr. Game Watch.
Yeah, the matchup
Bucket.
is unwinnable. Give up.
Yeah, and if
Yeah, I
your
mean,
character's
Pikachu's
like
busted.
the fast enough, you can run under depending on how high they do it. There's a
That's
decent
hard.
amount.
It's
Yeah,
possible,
you
but
can
that's like,
feint.
don't
You can
do
feint
that.
aggression, and then like if you're a fast character and you like jump towards Pikachu, a lot of Pikachu's will just like try to shield, and then you just like drift back, clank away to tjolt. Stuff like that can be good too. I think the real answer is like don't do one thing over and over. Don't go to the
Yeah.
platform every single time. Don't clank it away every single time. Don't run away every single time. Like have a rotation of answers that you go through.
Because
It's
that way it's
another
harder for
very
us.
player-to-player matchup. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. So we've been going on for quite some time, but I hope you guys
lot.
enjoyed the content.
We
I mean,
talked
that's
a lot.
that's a good thing though. We got the best Pikachus in the business on this episode,
Hell
so
yeah.
there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, this character has been relevant for a long time, since the beginning of the game, and still is relevant in this current meta, even though the meta has definitely shifted. Just goes to show how, overall, really flexible. I think Pikachu, at the end of the day, a very flexible character, especially when one of your biggest strengths is this thing called mobility, which is very important in a platform fighter where you can choose not to interact. Whereas some traditional fighters, it's very hard to not interact in a traditional fighter because the amount of space you're working with is not as much as like some of these platform fighters like Smash and stuff like that, right? So yeah, very interesting discussion. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, class dismissed.